Welcome to Stories Behind the Wealth, the podcast where high-earning professionals discover the real-life moments behind financial success with your host, Gaffar Chowdhury. On this episode, Gaffar's guest is Brian Balduzzi, an estate planning and tax attorney who helps entrepreneurs, executives, and multi-generational families plan and protect their wealth with a special focus on charitable giving and business exit planning. I'm RJ Malik, producer of this podcast, and Gaffar, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank
Excellent.
you.
So I see your guest is with us. So I'm going to just throw it to you, introduce your guest, and let's get going on the stories behind the wealth.
Yes, thank you. Brian, super excited to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. Outside of what the formal intro that RJ just shared, I'd love to hear how you would describe what you do when you're talking to friends and family.
So I help families plan, prepare, and protect their wealth. And I'm more focused on the lifetime legacy and death giving component of it. I work with financial and wealth advisors and accountants, help as a collaborative team for my clients. But overall, I think all of us have certain goals for our families, right, that might be tied to our wealth or tied to the values that we share as a family. I help families memorialize those goals and make sure that the plan is effective and efficient and that everyone is understanding of what is to happen if someone were to pass away, become incapacitated, and make sure that the plan is followed.
Love that. We definitely have a lot of overlap in the work that we do. So I'm excited to learn more about that. When you're looking at and working with entrepreneurs, executives, wealthy families, what are you seeing in terms of how they're thinking about legacy and giving back?
Yeah, so it has changed over the last, I'd say, 10 years plus that I've been practicing, in that more and more families are being conscious of the communities that their businesses, that their families work and live in respectively, and the desire to give back to that community in some way. And often the businesses have their own values, right? We've seen the growth of B corporations, but also just inscribing more charitable goals within a business, and seeing different nonprofits, community organizations as stakeholders within the business. And so I'm finding that those are coming out naturally in having business succession conversations, right? Where they are saying, well, we don't want our charitable giving to stop. We've been giving charitably through our business, but what happens when the business is sold? What happens when the business is transitioned to the next generation or to employees? Making sure that that charitable giving continues, that the values are memorialized, or that we're putting in structures so that the owners themselves can continue some form of charitable giving in their estate planning or in their wealth planning documents.
That's helpful. And then are most of your clients that you're working with high net worth, ultra high net worth? Are they business owners? I'm curious to learn a little bit more about that.
Great question. So I say that everyone has an estate, right? We don't think of these grandiose estates with lawns and big McMansions, right? But everyone has goals for their assets that they have. So I use the example I used to teach kindergarten, right? If you were to, move, who would you give some of your toys to, right? And you think about those strategic ways that you say, well, my best friend, played with this toy and I can't take it with me, so I want to give that to him. Or I had great memories with this property. It's the same when you die, or it's the same when you become incapacitated, that you have specific goals in memorializing that. So it's a long way of saying I have clients as young as 18 when they become legal adults. This happened a lot this past fall and summer when some of my clients' children and grandchildren were going off to college, right? And thinking about their first durable general power of attorney for financial decision-making and healthcare proxy for medical decision-making. Appointing someone, now that they are an adult, to make those decisions for them if they were to become incapacitated, right? Something bad happened at college or while they're away from home. Who can talk to the doctors? Who can access some bank accounts to make sure that bills can be paid? And then I have clients all the way up to 98, I think is my oldest client at the moment, right?
Wow.
And she's done many versions of her will and her estate plan. She's lived a wonderful life. She has a wonderful family there to support her. And we review every couple of years to make sure that the right people are making the right decisions for her. Executor, power of attorney, trustees, the like, that her plan can be followed and that her wishes are memorialized. And as her family has changed over the years, her plan has changed over the years. But I'd say my specialty has become more working with business owners and their families because they have unique issues that touch upon business and law and tax, really that require a collaborative team. And something that I enjoy doing is being part of that team and working with advisors like yourself, accountants, business valuation individuals to make sure that we are all aligned in how we're servicing that family. We hear what their goals are, and we can each add our expertise to make sure that the goals are followed, that there's some plan in place, right? And as the facts have changed, right, whether it's the law, whether it's the family or the business, that we all regroup, realign to assess how the plan needs to change in concordance with that.
Yeah, no, I really like that approach. So it sounds like, in all different facets of your professional, personal life, you can really come in and help that individual executive or business owner put together, documents and strategies to ultimately help them live a more meaningful life and do things on their terms, right?
Yes. And feel
Yeah.
good about that there's a plan in place, right? Should anything happen, right? They've thought through who will succeed them in making business decisions. If the company needs to be sold, who would benefit from that sale, right? After their death, upon incapacity. And is there any way that we can do so in an effective and efficient manner, right? So that's where family meetings can be important, right? If they want this to be truly a dynastic, multi-generational business, making sure we know who can take over the business, who wants the business. But if not, right, also thinking about the other owners or other key people within the business as part of the family, right? They might be
Yeah.
invited to the family meeting. And I think, one of my favorite shows for many years was Succession, right? And all the drama that was involved in that. That was a family business, right? And it had a
Absolutely.
lot of psychology, a lot of law, a lot of business practices, right? And pitfalls, right? That's where the drama came from of what maybe not to do. And they had some advisors, and I play a role in helping to avoid that drama. Or if there is that drama, helping to I guess, minimize what it is, helping to align the family in a more strategic way.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Also, one of my favorite shows. Yeah. I want to go back to something really interesting you said. First of all, I didn't know you used to teach kindergarten. That's really, really cool. So just for the listener, I want to kind of reiterate Brian's accomplishments. So kindergarten teacher, MBA, JD, LLM. What else am I missing?
I got my certified financial planner licensure a few years ago. So CFP
Yeah,
is what it's typically called. You'll see
yeah,
many wealth advisors and financial advisors that have that. I like to know and play well in the sandbox. So knowing what some of my fellow colleagues that are doing more of the investment planning, retirement planning, education planning, knowing how their background informs their conversations with my clients, I found valuable. Certified Exit Planning Advisor, a CEPA. It's one of my newer certifications, again, because of working with business owners, understanding what I call the three-pronged stool for how the business, the personal, and the financial all play a role in how owners exit their business, right? So thinking about readiness planning, in each of those components. Is the business ready? Is the family ready? Are they ready personally, right? For some transition, some exit, some succession plan. The Impact Philanthropic Advisor program is also one of my newer certifications. I've seen a growth in charitable planning, and we talked about this offline previously and shared our respective interests as well as wealth of information and resources in helping clients align, right, their charitable planning goals with the overall wealth plan. And so I think of impact philanthropy as a growing area, particularly for younger generation business owners. Not just giving with a checkbook, but giving strategically, giving to think about impact and legacy is very important to me. And it's a wonderful community that I've been able to be a part of. And then an accredited estate planner. So after having practiced for 10 years, you can apply to be an accredited estate planner based on your experience and recommendations and the like. And that was something that I got a few years ago after meeting that milestone. So those are some of my certifications, and they inform some of the work that I do with clients.
Just a few, no big deal, That is phenomenal. Congratulations and kudos to you. And you're still relatively young, so I think that's a huge accomplishment. I think that background makes you very good at what you do, and I love the cross-disciplinary, focuses where you get to understand how financial advisors, planners, how exit planners, obviously estate planning, how all of that is ultimately intertwined, which allows you to work with other cross disciplines and bring the best solutions to the table when it comes to working with clients.
It's really beneficial just to understand the value add that other advisors on my clients' teams bring, and to be able to speak a little bit of their language enough to what I call yes and them. It's a term from improv, right? And that you're not saying no to someone's suggestion, you're saying yes and this. Yes, and this also. It just builds a lot of credibility, I find, on a team when all of the advisors of that mentality, or they understand enough that they can add value to what others are proposing, rather than shutting it down, or rather than not having enough information to support, right, the expertise that others are bringing to the team.
Yeah, absolutely. So when a high income, high net worth client walks into your firm or gives you a call and says, I want to be more intentional about giving, how do you start that conversation with them?
I always start with the family. I want to understand who they are as people and layer on top of that. So typically the family is either number one or number two, right? Depending on the business and where they are in their personal, professional lives. But I start with who's your family? And I use the phrase chosen family because more and more of my clients are not just biological, are not just thinking about supporting spouse and descendants or partner and descendants, but are also thinking upward, right? So they might be still supporting parents. They might see friends and family and even charity as part of their chosen family, part of the people that they would want to support if they were no longer there. And so I start there. I layer on, for my business owner clients, tell me about your business, right? Who's a co-owner? Who are some of your key people? What are some of your struggles? What are some of your successes? What are some of your goals? Understanding where that is and where they are in the trajectory of their business can also inform some of the estate planning. And then we get more into the, what do they know about estate planning? And some clients have done wonderful research. Some clients already have a plan in place, and we're just updating or tweaking or reviewing. Others are starting from scratch, and they know nothing about it, or they've used AI and have some answers. And I fill in some gaps, and we start with, let's put a good plan in place, and a plan is written. A plan is something that can be reviewed and revised. It's something to be shared with the people that you love and care about, particularly the people that you're appointing into key roles when someone is no longer able to act. client is no longer able to act. And so I go through that, and maybe it's multiple meetings. I typically start with a half hour or an hour, in person or virtual, get to know you. That family conversation, I let them know a little bit about my background, what types of clients I work with, how I charge. Clients have questions on that. And then a little bit about my firm. So being at a full-size, multidisciplinary legal firm, with multiple offices, I find that sometimes there's employment issues, litigation, ERISA, other general corporate matters that my firm can support with. And so making introductions as I hear, I'm an issue spotter, right? So this is where hearing about the goals and the successes and some of the pitfalls or problems that the company is facing, I can make strategic introductions to others that might be able to help them outside of the estate planning, but overall in support of the family or in support of the business, making their lives easier, making sure they're planned for and protected.
Yeah, no, I really like that. I'm gonna have to use that terminology, issue spotter.
You are.
I haven't.
I know
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I haven't heard that, but you're absolutely right. Yeah, we identify issues and help clients develop strategies to create solutions, right?
Absolutely.
Um, so there are so many tools, and I'm going to use charitable planning for a second. When it comes to charitable planning, direct giving, donor advised funds, private foundations, charitable trusts, right? When you're chatting with a client or prospective client, how do you help them decide what the right vehicle is?
I like to go back to the idea of impact, right? So there are certain strategies that are one and done. We think of checkbook giving, one and done, right? It's when you get around to it, when someone sends you a mailer, when you remember to do it. Maybe it's year end. And then there's others that are more intentional, right, or prescriptive. So I think of something like a charitable lead trust, right? That's taken all the guesswork out of it. It's a type of trust where a charity is getting an annuity at the front end of the trust,
Yeah.
and they're starting it, and they might get it for 20 years, and then it flips, and maybe the balance goes to children, right? But that's taking the guesswork out of how much am I going to give each year? How much is this charity going to get each year? And then in between that, you might have something like a donor advised fund, right? That's very easy. It's a custodial account of sorts, where you might not have control over it, but you can make suggestions for grants to whoever the custodian is. And the grants can be general, thematic, they could be specific organizations, the like, right? But talking with the client of what their goals are, what overall impact they want to have, and what level of complexity really they want to look at for their charitable giving goals. And it's a multi-tier conversation, right? It's also not a one and done. I have a client right now who's about to sell their business, right? And we're talking with them not only about a charitable remainder trust where they, as the donor, would get an annuity and the charity at the end of the trust term gets the remainder, but we're also talking about a donor advised fund versus private family foundation. We're talking about the pros and cons of each of them, and what's going to best accomplish the client's goals, what's going to have the most impact, as well as balancing that administrative complexity for the family on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. I want to shift our focus a little bit to business succession and exit planning because I know, being a CPA and with your legal background, that's one of the big things that you help clients with. What are some of the most common points of concern or tension that you see business owners think about when it comes to selling their business or transitioning in some way?
Timing is critically important, right? Both from my end, as well as I think for the client's end. And this is where I like to get information on what the client's goals are long term, right? Get them thinking aspirationally.
Yeah,
Often clients don't want to die running their business, right? That's not an ideal situation unless they have a great plan
absolutely.
in place for who's going to pick up at any given moment. But often, we don't know when death is going to happen. So thinking about who is on their team, when would they look if they wanted to exit? What would that look like ideally? So some clients, like myself included, I work as an attorney, and so I know what my retirement date is. I have a date in mind. Business owners also should think about, what does retirement look for you? And it doesn't have to be a one and done, I'm selling my company, right? You could sell part of it. You could transition part of it to the next generation. And they could continue to be a consultant. They could continue to be a part owner, but maybe not a majority owner. Maybe they're just a beneficiary in that they have a minority stake in it, right? But they're not day-to-day serving as CEO, COO, CFO, all rolled into one. But they start to think strategically about building a team and building a succession plan. I like to think about that timing first, and then getting the right people around the table that can help with that succession plan, whatever it might be, or helping to get a good idea of what the plan can be, right? So whether they are selling to a third party and we're working on the multiple to make sure that when a buyer is coming, we know what we're worth. We know what the company is worth. And so we know what a good offer is and maybe a less good offer is. If we're thinking about something like an ESOP, right, and selling to employees, do we understand who the employees are? Are they sufficiently motivated? Do we have the right structure that ESOP is going to be successful and a good transition for the business overall? And then for the family, right, sometimes there's multi-generational business succession planning and thinking about, how do we prepare the family to succeed the client as the owner of the business or running the business? So do they need to get an MBA? Do you want them to get an MBA? How many years should they be working in the business before some succession planning will start? And then what types of roles do you feel comfortable with them assuming, taking, the like? So I've had some, I'll call them widget makers, right? They're making something tangible. I've had some business owners say, I want my child to work in the factory, right? I want them to be on the line and not just be stuck in an office somewhere. I want them to know how the proof in the pudding is made, how the widgets are made before they run this company, because it's so important for that business owner based on their values, right? That they understand all levels of the organization. I think really unpacking that, and I'll be candid, I don't do a lot of that, but I know others that do much more of that. Let's call it a business coach. Getting that business coach to talk through with the owner, with the client, about all of those soft, psychological, goal-oriented conversations, and then bringing in strategists like me to help implement or help to organize what that plan is.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting you say that. I feel like a lot of the work that we do with individuals that, like you described, is around coaching and capturing goals and talking through goals, and ultimately bringing in specialists, like you, to help us tie all of that together. So that's spot on. That's spot on. So speaking of our clients, right, that we both work with, they really are concerned about tax, like taxes in general, whether it's income tax, whether it's tax on investments, tax on the estate planning side, and then charitable planning side. Can you talk a little bit? We could probably talk about this for hours, you and I, but can you talk a little bit about maybe one or two strategies that you've seen in motion as a professional when it comes to tax mitigation?
Sure. So I'll talk about two different levels or two different sides of this. The most basic is I talk about minimizing or deferring estate tax. So the estate tax exemption amount has gone up increasingly over the last 10, 15 years, and President Trump just increased it again starting January 1st of 2026 with his One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and that anyone can give away $15 million during their life or upon their death. So may we all be blessed enough to have $15 million to give away, right? And if you have a spouse, you can give and a limited amount to your spouse and use their exemption. So a couple can give away $30 million. But for clients that have over that and ones that have a business, we think about structuring their overall estate plan, maybe their will, their revocable trust, to defer as much as possible. We talk about how we organize business interests for minority discounts such that we're giving it away maybe at fractions or pennies on the dollar now, with the goal that it would appreciate outside of their taxable estate. That's the first side. So the estate tax side, lots of planning to be done, conversations based on the goals the clients have. The other side is more on the income tax. And so for many of my business owners, they are facing a large income tax bill when they potentially sell their business, right? I'm thinking third parties. And so there are various strategies with trusts that they can set aside funds that could qualify for qualified small business stock, QSBS stacking, using non-grantor trust rules in order to mitigate perhaps the capital gains owed on a C Corp being sold. And so talking through with clients about how is your business structured, how long have you had different stock in the business, what are your goals for selling it, and would certain trust structures accomplish that? So sometimes it's what's called a spousal lifetime access trust and structuring it as a non-grantor trust. So it becomes the acronym SLANT. Or thinking about a dynasty trust for descendants, or something called an incomplete non-grantor gift trust. All of these are different acronyms. They have different structures to them for estate planning, but they can benefit a chosen family member as beneficiaries and help both on the income tax side as well as to provide at one of the biggest milestones and junctions of many clients' lives, the sale or succession of a business.
Yeah, I love that. Those tools and strategies we see on a regular basis. So I'm glad that you're seeing that as well, and that was really helpful. So I know we could have this conversation again, like I said, for hours and hours. But I definitely want to consider bringing you back for a future episode. We could probably talk about a plethora of other strategies and ideas. But let's wrap it up with some rapid fire questions. And
Let's
this
go.
is more this is more what I would tell the listener. This is getting to know Brian just a little bit more than what he described. So, Brian, when you hear the word legacy, what's the first word that comes to mind?
Future. Thinking about
Love it.
your future.
Love it. If you were a Shakespeare play, which one would it be and why?
I love A Midsummer Night's Dream. I've directed it. I've acted in it. I think it's just a beautiful story about what do we dream, what are our goals, and how does life get in the way of that, and then how do we circle back and eventually get our dreams.
That's awesome. What's one charitable giving strategy you wish more high net worth clients actually used?
Donor Advised Fund, DAF.
Yeah.
I mentioned their custodial account. They're super easy to set up, and it allows you to get a charitable deduction today, even if you can't decide where exactly to give it now. That decision can be made later, but you get the immediate income tax advantage with low administrative costs. And no, I'm not trying to sell anything. I have no skin in the game other than I like charitable giving.
Yeah, no, well said. Well said. All right, final one. What's one thing you enjoy doing outside of work that also helps keep you grounded?
I'm a teacher at heart. I love teaching. And so I continue to teach in tax, estate planning, finance, business law. And I love giving to the next generation. So thinking about how I've thought about it, some of the things that we've talked about today, hopefully if my students are listening, they've heard some of the same concepts or themes come about. But I think giving back to that next generation, setting them up for success and making sure that we as planners, we as advisors have a succession plan, and that starts with education.
That is really awesome, and I really hope your students are listening because I really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm looking forward to working more with you and learning more from you. So thank you again for your time. If listeners wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way to get in touch with you and how can they find you?
So I like to send people to my firm bio, just because they can see whether it's a good fit to work with me. So I practice in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Massachusetts, New York, Florida, weaving into South Dakota and DC at the moment. Those are the primary areas where I practice, but you can read more about my bio. Look me up at our Faegre Drinker, Faegre Drinker.com. You can find my bio there and reach out via email at Brian Balduzzi at FaegreDrinker.com. And, hopefully we can work together and find more opportunities.
Absolutely. Also, LinkedIn. You're pretty active on LinkedIn, right?
I am. So if you really want to see all of my thought leadership, learn about my speaking engagements, I tend to be pretty active there. I'm sure I'll be sharing this on LinkedIn and getting more listeners to you all and hearing the great programs that you have.
Thank you. Appreciate it. With that, RJ, take it away, my friend.
All right, Gaffar, Brian, that was an interesting conversation to listen to. And thank you for listening to Stories Behind the Wealth. Be sure to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. If you're a busy, accomplished professional looking to build confidence in your financial future, visit us at districtwealthstrategies.com or call 202-759-8524 to learn how our team can help. Because money talks, we listen, and the stories are just getting started. For Gaffar Chowdhury, I'm RJ Malik, and we hope you'll join us for the next Stories Behind the Wealth podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to Stories Behind the Wealth. Be sure to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. If you're a busy, accomplished professional or a business owner looking to build confidence in your financial future, visit us at districtwealthstrategies.com or call 202-759-8524 to learn how our team can help. Because money talks, we listen, and the stories are just getting started. The views and opinions expressed are those of the program participants and are not necessarily those of MML Investor Services, LLC. The material is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. You should strongly consider seeking advice from your own investment specialist. Gaffar Chowdhury is a registered representative of and offers securities through MML Investor Services, LLC, member SIPC, OSJ 530 Gaither Road, Suite 350, Rockville, Maryland, 20850, phone number 301-355-5800. District Wealth Strategies is not a subsidiary or an affiliate of MML Investor Services, LLC.